Preparing to go live, should pop up any minute. Turn the volume off on this. Okay, we are live. Share it. It is live on my page. Okay, let me pull this back up. Okay, hold on. I'm going to let everybody. Welcome everybody there on Facebook. Welcome to our new normal, the COVID-19 edition of Black Westchester Presents the People Before Politics radio show. It's one of those interesting situations where you gotta let everybody else in your house know that you're doing a show, and please not come nowhere near the door right now. Keep that noise downstairs or outside. So if you hear noise in any of our houses, we're all home.
Yes. So, I did that before we came on.
Okay, yeah. I've had, we got as a 4-year-old in the house. Sometimes she'll just, closed doors don't matter to her. She just walks in, waves on the camera, and then walks back out. So you may see that.
I don't have kids. I don't have kids yet, but I got 3 dogs, and they'll be making appearances.
Oh, yeah. One of them came.
I think it's fully human of us. It's good.
Yeah, one of them came in and tried to take over the last show. All in the face. Yeah. So we have a big show for y'all today. Our first guest today is New York 17th District Congressional candidate Allison Fine. As you all know, I've been doing as many of the interviews in this election. There were at one point 10 or 12 candidates, and now it's down to, I believe, 7.
That's right.
I've interviewed, you're the 5th one I'm interviewing, and I think we're doing David Buchwald next week. Only person I haven't talked to is David Colucci, and his people didn't contact me, so I'm not gonna.
You don't need him.
But you've seen Mondier, Asha Castleberry Hernandez,
yes,
Catherine Parker, who now has stepped out, Evelyn Farkas. There was someone else, and
Adam Schleifer.
Adam, yes. Oh, sorry, Adam. And Adam, yes, Adam was last week. So that's what the first hour is going to be. We're going to interview her, and in the second hour, we're going to have on Nancy Cater Maldonado. Her son died at the hands of the Greenberg police in 2017, and today there was a rally in White Plains, Greenberg area, and we invited her because I think it's very important. We are protesting, and wow, what happened to George Floyd is egregious by every sense of whatever. It's also equally important that if we're going to protest and march and stand up for people over 1,200 miles away, we need to do that with the people here in Westchester.
Yeah.
The Kenneth Chamberlains, the Christopher Ridleys and the Jonathan Maldonados, just to name a few. So we're going to go on and she's going to tell her story. But I'm not sure if I've actually seen her tell her story before. So it'll be the first time for me hearing it.
It'll be an exclusive, yeah.
Yeah, this will be definitely my first time. I will be meeting her today and hearing her story for the first time, like some of you. So with that said, real quick, couple of things. A couple of announcements. So in Mount Vernon, we have a school board and a library trustee election. I believe there are several school board elections throughout New York State that are this Tuesday, but in New York, they're not going, you can't vote at the voting place for this election. So everyone got mailed, every registered voter was supposed to get an absentee ballot. I didn't get mine till Friday, and I'm one of 5 voters in my house. The other 4 didn't get theirs till yesterday. So I don't know when they mail these out, and if we're just getting them, there's no way that if you put them in the mail tomorrow, they were going to get to the Board of Education. I guess that's where ours goes, to the Board of Education here in Mount Vernon. I guess that's where everybody else's goes, to their own Board of Education. But there was no way they was going to get there Tuesday by 5 o'clock. But I just, Brenda Crump, one of the trustees running and a friend of the show, she just sent out that the governor extended, they're allowed to accept the absentee ballots till the 16th. While that is an extension of a week, I urge everyone, when you get it, if you got it already, or when you get it, if you get it tomorrow or Tuesday, fill it out immediately and mail it. Or better yet, if you can, I know in Mount Vernon there's a drop box right there at the school board, at the Board of Education. That's where I dropped mine off at. I would do that. I wouldn't even trust the mail. But if you have to, it's a self-addressed. It comes in a self-addressed envelope. You don't have to pay for the postage, and you just give it to your mailman and drop it off in the mailbox. So I just want to urge everybody to do that, because I just learned that today. And for everybody listening to my voice, especially cities like Mount Vernon and Yonkers, last time I looked, they are so far the lowest in numbers of returning the census.
Oh, yes. I think the census needs to be extended, AJ. I think it's unrealistic to expect people to have filled it out this year.
Right. So but I mean, regardless, we're in a new normal. So
yeah,
that you have to make the adjustments. This show right now, this is us making the adjustments.
Yeah.
We had to push back several shows. Matter of fact, you were one of the ones we had to cancel because the studio closed just as we had you scheduled, like a week or two. You and Carol, you and Catherine Parker. Okay, I'm still getting messages from Michelle. Okay, so I advise everybody to take the time. It takes 30 seconds tops.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a minute if you take your time and do it with your eyes closed. I mean, like, it literally is that easy, but it means the difference of, I believe, the government gives, and if anybody who's listening on Facebook, I'll pull up the audience so I can look at the comments. Anybody who's listening, please correct me, but I believe that the city that you live in, the municipality that you live in, gets $2,500 per person per year.
Yes.
Per person that fills out the census. So being that the census is not going to be filled out again for another 10 years, 2,500, what is that? 25,000, that's 25, was that 25,000 or 250,000? Times 10, 25,000. That's 25,000 that your city loses per person.
Per person.
For
federal funding.
Right.
For things like housing and SNAP and a whole bunch of other social services that won't come to our communities if there's an undercount.
Right. So and again, Lorraine can tell you, Yonkers has been one of them. They've been under, when you get to, they've been just under the 200,000 mark.
Yeah.
And getting at 200,000 brings another level of, funding. So it's, you in Mount Vernon, let's put it this way. In the 1960 census, there was 70,000 people. In the last census, there was 68,000. Now, I find it hard to believe there were more people here in 1960 than there is now.
Yep.
A lot of people renting multifamily houses, and I believe we're closer to 100,000, and we're very grossly undercounted. And Mount Vernon, like Yonkers a little bit too, is a dumping ground where they bring all of those people that they don't want in other cities, but they don't furnish us with the resources to care for those people.
Yep.
And so I have a couple of people agreeing with me.
Can I click on the census, AJ?
Oh yeah, I am correct about the school board. Is date stamped. It has to be stamped by the two. No, if you can bring it in, they can bring it only by June 9th. If mailed, it must be there by the 16th. That's what I said. It has to be there by the 16th. I will find a link because Brenda gave me a link earlier. I don't know if she's watching. I will put it in the comment section so everybody can read it. A couple of comments real quick. A couple of people, Luis Cherico, Lauren Reza, Big Puro Gonzalez said, my beautiful aunt Lorraine Lopez. Dawn Seawright, Cheryl Blue Brownlee Fox. Oh, she shared the link. Click on that link that Cheryl shared. That's the story right there from the governor's thing. Luis Jericho, Warren Razor. Yes, I got all of it. And Jen Wang, how are you?
Hi, Jen.
And, yes. So I want to get all that in. Census real quick, and then we're going to get into our candidate.
All right. I did the census 10 years ago for the city of Yonkers, me in the Office of Planning and Development when I worked for Phil Coney. This year, I'm a Mayor's Panel Census Count Committee. When we did it 10 years ago, we got up to 188 plus, barely under the 200,000 mark. Right now in the city of Yonkers, we're at 50% of the people that are filling it out. People need to understand that this is a time of COVID. We lost a lot of funding because of COVID. We're gonna be struggling to get back on track. And we really, really need this money. It's very, very important. So I do suggest that everyone fill out the census. You can fill it out online. You can fill out the mailer they sent you, or you can do it by phone.
Okay. And Allison or whoever is handling your social media, the show is broadcasting live on my page, and all you do is click share, so you can put it on your campaign's page or your personal page, so all of your supporters can watch this. I'm actually sharing it right now. So again, in the studio, you've never had the pleasure of being in the studio. I have like 4 or 5 computers and some sound effects, and at this point, I would be hitting a button that says applause, and applause will be playing right now. And well, I have to verbally tell you that because I don't have an applause button here. So.
Well, you could clap for me. Go ahead right now.
Just give me some manual clap.
That's what Bob does. That's all I'm asking for.
That's what Dr. Bob does. He does the manual clap every time I forget to hit the button. Oh, shout out to William O'Shaughnessy of WVOX who's tuned in. Welcome to the show, William. Patrice Wallace Moore, my cousin Mark Bennett, White Plains Councilwoman Nadine Hunt Robinson, and Alex Harrison. So welcome to the show, Allison. First, before we get into anything, you candidates always talk about who they are as a candidate, what they've done. Who is Allison Fine, the person? Not the candidate, the person. Go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity. It's a pleasure to be here on what is, and we'll get to it, a very difficult time as well. AJ, I grew up in Sleepy Hollow. I lived 2 blocks from where I grew up, right on the river. I raised 3 boys in Irvington. Westchester is deeply my home. I care very much what happens here, what happens to our people here. When I was 22, I came back from college and I was elected a trustee in Sleepy Hollow. I was the youngest elected official in New York State. And I was in charge of the committee that oversaw the police and fire departments. And from that experience, I was in that role for 3 years. I understand the tensions of running local police and fire departments, the benefits that they bring to our communities, and what we need to sort of uproot to be different in that regard. I have spent my entire career as a community organizer, as a leader in Tech for Good, focused on social justice. I have fought for fair housing in East Baltimore, for environmental justice in East St. Louis, for reproductive freedom in rural Georgia, and to reduce hate crimes and anti-Semitism here in Westchester and Rockland. So these issues are very, very personal for me. They run deep. I want to make sure I'm raising kids that understand what true justice is. And I want to be a great ally to other folks in their fights. And that takes a level of humility and listening that has been long learned in my career.
Now, the interesting, unfortunate or interesting, however way you look at it, these coronavirus already changed things and
Yes.
changed the course of questions that I would ask in a traditional candidate interview. And
Yes.
then we have the national outrage
Yes.
over the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis and many others before him. But he was that death was the catalyst that kicked off this, and actually not just nationally, internationally. You have
Yes.
all 50 states and I believe 20 countries
Yes.
protesting the name George. What happened to the man named George Floyd, a name that they had never heard of before because of what they saw on a video.
Yes.
So because of that, questions change a little bit. So one of the things that we at Black Westchester have been talking about, this is probably, I'm 54. So I was 2 when Martin Luther King got killed.
Yeah.
I really wasn't alive or was too young to really remember the protests of the 60s. What we're seeing now has to be the biggest outrage and protest of my life. But without elected officials passing police criminality laws, this will be just another big protest that turned into riots some places, some destruction some places. Right. Frustration was let out, noise was made, the news media, did what they did, right. out all around the clock, filling their channels, and nothing is done.
That's right. That's right.
And the reason we talk Black Westchester, and my partner Damon is having a gathering at his house today, so he's not on, but he's the head of Blacks in Law Enforcement of America. And one of the things they did is they challenged elected officials to pass police criminality laws. And let me explain what I'm talking about exactly. The Eric Garner situation, the New York City Police Department banned the chokehold, but it wasn't against the law. So while he broke policies and procedures, he physically did not break a law and did not go to jail. And it took 6 years before they even fired him. No one is going to jail. The only person arrested in that situation who went to jail was the individual who shot the video, the young man who shot the video. So we need our elected officials to pass police criminality laws. One, to describe what a police crime is in law, and if a law enforcement officer violates his policies, procedures, and training, it should be against the law and he should go to jail. So if elected, what kind of things would you be trying to put into place as far as that's concerned?
So AJ, the pandemic and the protests are not separate activities. They are linked together. Pandemics are poverty multipliers, right? Mm-hmm. And what we saw immediately was that none of the money that came out from the federal government got to the people, right? The money was immediately sucked up by the commercial banks and the corporations. If we wanted people to stay employed, we would have put the money out through payroll companies, right? You want businesses to stay afloat, you want people to have food on the table, you make sure that their paychecks keep showing up. Right. We didn't do that. We immediately made millions and millions of people unemployed. And we were already at a level of income inequality that we haven't seen since 1968. It is not a coincidence that all of this is happening right now, right? People are rubbed raw by this level of inequality and by the lack of systemic change after each of the incidences you just mentioned. They happen, we get outraged. They happen, we get outraged. Here's why my work is different. Anybody running in a Democratic primary, AJ, is going to come on your show right now and say, yes, we need to demilitarize the police. We need to outlaw chokeholds. We need to, make sure the Justice Department has consent decrees put back in, which Jeff Sessions took out, so that the federal government can investigate local police departments. But what they don't understand, and I think about this as dandelions, what they don't understand is by having a laundry list of policies is like plucking the flower off the top of the dandelion and never digging in and getting to the roots.
Mm.
And the roots are, what do we fund? Where does the money go? And what are the values in our policies, right? And for years and years, beginning with the war on drugs in the 1990s, we have been turning American domestic police departments into military forces, right? Equipped with military equipment all over them and with military style tactics, where the people in communities of color that they're policing have become the enemy, right? That's how that happens over the years, as you look at what's being funded and then what culture it creates. And it's more than just pulling off the top of the dandelion. You got to dig into what exactly are the values we're trying to incorporate, and then making sure the money follows that, right? And that's what you're not going to hear from other candidates, because they haven't spent a career in deep social change movements the way that I have, right? This is more than this is more than a laundry list. This is a vision of creating a new economy where people really do have an opportunity to build wealth, build companies, create savings, and where we are shifting our money from militarizing the police to building community services, right? Mental health services, job training, food, right? One of the things that is so appalling, I think the most, just as a human being, the most appalling thing about the pandemic was that we as Americans expected food bank to start feeding millions and millions of people, and Washington never increased the money for the SNAP program for just that purpose, right? These are our values. And this is why you elect somebody, right? You want to see, what are their values? What are they going to really fight for in this new era? We're going to keep coming back to this moment in time unless and until we really get into a different set of policies, a different set of values that are driving our national policy. And this is why I'm not taking any PAC money, AJ. I will not be beholden to corporations. And I think, like you would say, people matter more than politics, right?
Absolutely. Now, in the last year, we had, and people called for it. We got, and as I say, you always got to be careful what you call for, because of situations like what we're going through, people called for criminal justice reform. As one of the reasons that came about, too many people sitting in jail because they couldn't bail, and et cetera, no discovery. But in demanding these things, the public made the politicians rush to put something together.
Yeah.
And what they did was necessary. Same way I think what Obama did with the Affordable Care was necessary, but it needs to be reformed. So the criminal justice reform needs to be reformed. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think? And I think there is a certain reform that kicks in July or something. It is part of it. Yeah.
So I think, again, we need to back up a step, right? Why have we created a school to prison pipeline? Mm-hmm. And I think we need to take a step back and look at public education in this country. Countries around the world that have strong democracies and big, robust middle classes have the best public education systems in the world. I was working on a project in Harlem a couple of years ago, AJ, and it was so heartbreaking to me. It was one big building. One half of the building was a regular New York City public school, no resources. The teachers had little carts they would take around to classes. The teachers were going on to Donors Choose to raise money just to get some fundamental supplies. Mm-hmm. Other half of the building was a charter school, right? That 1 out of every 1,000 kids won a lottery to get into. Fully funded, beautiful classrooms, computers everywhere. And I remember asking the children, this was a 3rd grade class, who were having lunch in the same room with different food on one side of the room from the other side of the room. I said, how does that make you feel? And this little boy said to me, I'm just used to the fact that they get more than I do. Same school building. How it was the most appalling level of planned inequality I have ever seen in my life, right? That New York City allowed that to happen. So we need to back up and make sure that we are fully funding public education for every single child in this country. Every child should have the equipment and the supplies and the teachers they need to learn. And that is someplace where the federal government could step in and help to make sure no teacher is going online to beg for supplies for a student. We need to make sure that kids are ready to not just have content thrown at them, but understand how to learn, how to become lifelong learners, how to become entrepreneurs. Not many people know that before this crisis, we were at a 30-year low point for business startups. New businesses are the engine for job growth in this country. 2/3 of new jobs come from business startups, and we haven't been able to do that. You can't build wealth if you can't start a business. And so these are just some of the fundamental pieces that we haven't focused on in a very long time. Then, of course, I want to make sure we're reducing sentences for nonviolent offenders. We're allowing people who have served their time to be able to vote, to re-enfranchise them as voters and full citizens, and providing job training upon their release so that they can also get jobs and have the skills they need for a new economy as well.
We have a question from the audience, Charles Stearns, who's a regular guest co-host with us. He has a show called Red Blue Talk. He asks, so would you support expansion of charter schools so the whole building can be a charter?
No, just the opposite. I think we should not have charter schools, which provide more resources for a very small percentage of kids. And in Westchester, we have very few charter schools. I think we need to invest in public schools and we need to make them great. We have plenty of people who want to teach in them. We just have a fundamentally very unequal way of funding public schools through property taxes, which ensure that wealthier communities have more resources for their schools, and we need to unlock those pieces. But fundamentally, there should be one public education system in this country that serves all students well.
Yeah, we kind of, it was crazy because in Yonkers, when all the kids had to go home and learn from school,
yeah,
nobody had
they didn't have the technology.
Computer. No, they didn't.
Right? You sent them home.
Yonkers school system only gave out 1,000 iPads, and they have to return them. So if you break them, you're responsible for them.
Talk about the inequality, Lorraine. You sent the kids home without the technology for them to continue to learn, right? Then you said to parents, stay home, try to do your jobs, and become full-time childcare providers. Then, to make it even worse, when you begin to open up the economy, you're asking parents to go back to work when schools, camps, and a lot of daycare centers are closed. What in the world are they supposed to do with their kids? And this is what happens when you don't have enough people in the rooms focused on families and kids making decisions. I'll tell you though, AJ, this is really personal for me in terms of public education because my mother ran for school board here in Sleepy Hollow and Tarrytown when I was in middle school because she was so upset with white flight. We had the first influx of families from Central America. And I was with her in living rooms and boardrooms for 10 years when she was president of school board here, fighting against just vile racist comments directed at her to fight for ESL and social services in the schools for every single kid. So we've been in this fight for a while.
Go ahead, Lorraine.
No, because I just want to say, speaking about the technology, I have a mother contacted me. They had one cell phone in the house. It's not enough for all the kids to do the homework, and the cell phone barely worked.
Yeah.
She called the Yonkers public school system. She begged them. she begged them for a laptop. They said they didn't have any. What ended up happening was they called CPS on her because the kids were not doing homework.
That's exactly.
And that's where our friend Cynthia Turnquist Jones, AJ, came in. I was able to get them 2 Kindles.
Right.
And Cynthia, ironically, she was one of the first co-hosts when we started the show. She was the first co-host,
yeah.
And she actually is running for school board in Mount Vernon right now, and that's not necessarily a plug. We just talk about
right. That's right. But the technology divide is so huge, and again, as I was saying, pandemics being poverty multipliers. The fact that so many low-income kids have now lost a half a year of school, maybe more, depending on what happens in the fall. I don't know how they catch up now that they're so far behind, right?
Now that was where I was going with my next question. So in a perfect world, we go back to school and everybody goes back to work, but we need to understand that we're not living in a perfect world. So there is a great chance with second wave coming that they talk about. And because of this protest, and I wrote a piece that you should read if you hadn't read, having to choose between social distancing and social justice. So people have gone out.
Yep.
And I've even heard stories where they're sending people that are affected by COVID into these crowds, like to affect people. Whatever way it is, there will be somewhat of an outbreak from these large gatherings, because there have been people who have gone there inconsiderate of the peaceful protesters and not have masks, and they're large groups together. So we have a second we have a break, outbreak, and then a second wave. We need to be looking at more of a new normal. There may be more of this needing to school from home, or
yes,
so the need for technology. We need to be furthering that to prepare for all of these things. I don't think that New York State, I don't think the country, but I don't think New York State is preparing for that.
No, I don't. Listen, we don't do a good job, AJ, of, we look straight down. We don't look up and out as a country. And we haven't had leadership that does that. As I mentioned to you before, most people, most politicians, most candidates that you talk to will give you a laundry list of policies. That's not vision. That's not about where we go from here. So if you want to talk about tech and education, the vision of what it could be that we make sure every single child has access to the technology they need. And as a country, we're creating curricula for them so that every child can learn at the pace and in the style that suits them best, as well as having the interactive and the community piece of this, right? So imagine a country where every child has equal access to the tools they need to learn and to a curriculum that suits them best, right? That's where we need to go.
Sound like a Martin Luther King dream that's turned into a nightmare that never came to fruition. That's what it sounds like to me.
Where exactly is the 17th Congressional District for those people that just tuned in right now?
So it's not on the Sound, so it's not Yonkers and Mount Vernon. It starts at it starts in Harrison, Portchester, White Plains over to Dobbs, over to the river, up to Peekskill. And then, Lorraine, the kind of crazy part is it's all of Rockland County. Wow. And that's because of gerrymandering, because you all know Westchester and Rockland are really so very fundamentally different.
Yeah.
And so it's a challenge to put
another thing.
One district.
Another thing, what happens after the census, I believe.
Yes,
districts get redrawn.
Well,
so,
New York State, because of an undercount, New York State's at risk of losing 2 congressional seats, which is bad. But then they are going to probably redraw the lines after 2020.
And basically, like the saying, history is written by the winner. District lines are drawn by the winner. So the importance of voting in this election, and you know what I'm saying, and putting your people in position so that they can be part of the redistricting, the drawing up the lines, that probably will be better for some of our communities, to bring in
Yes.
resources to some of our communities. So that's just another, people don't understand, a lot of people don't realize the importance of the vote. Like, and every year, every election, this is the most important election. Well, nationally down, this actually may be one of the most important elections of my life.
I mean, AJ, if you're not voting this year with that guy in the White House, I don't know when you're going to vote, because it's just so frightening. This, the level of both corruption and incompetence, putting the two of those things together in a pandemic has just been absolutely disastrous for the country. And we're going to have to rebuild a whole bunch of things.
I've been very critical of the governor. I'm not necessarily ever going to be on his Christmas card list because I've been so critical of him. But he has shown a certain level of leadership that we're missing at the highest level.
Yeah.
And I do respect him for that.
Yeah.
I do respect him for that. Oh boy. Lorraine, any more questions real quick? She said I never
Right.
ask questions.
No.
Okay. Gotta check with you because you're like, you don't ever let me ask questions.
We argue. Yeah.
Yes. I get this all the time, and then I get it for the next 3 days. So I'm making sure she gets her question.
No, I'm more worried. I got the door open. A fly came in, and it's really bothering me. So you're gonna see a fly
okay.
all over.
So shout out to Dana K. Jones, my partner. We're celebrating our 60-year anniversary this year for the show and for the website. And shout out to Dr. Bob, Robert Baskerville. He's working on some research right now, so he is not here.
What do you think about HUD housing?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
So one huge problem is that the criteria used by HUD for how to define the poverty level hasn't been updated in 40 years. In addition, we live in a very expensive district. Yes. So it used to be, Lorraine, when in the 70s, when that last time that formula was updated, the idea was if you're spending more than a third of your income on housing, you plus had, low income, you would deserve relief. I can see your fly.
You see, it's so annoying. And it's big.
It's big. Now the problem is so many costs in our lives have skyrocketed in a way nobody in 1975 would have ever imagined. We wouldn't have imagined healthcare costing so much. We wouldn't have imagined utilities costing so much. So we need to update the criteria for being, eligible for HUD housing, and we need to make many more, housing stock available for people. This is such a critical issue for Westchester, not having affordable housing. I know the county did a survey last year and said we're 11,000 units short on affordable housing. That was last year before the pandemic, right? And we know a lot of people haven't been able to afford their rent in the last 2 months and are laid off. So we have a housing crisis. And again, this has to be a fundamental value for people in Congress, is making sure that every American has access to decent housing as a fundamental right. Affordable housing is a fundamental right.
I think we need to define what affordable housing is, because I can't afford any of the things that they call affordable housing personally.
Well, that's just it.
Isn't there a difference between HUD housing and affordable housing? Isn't that two different entities?
It is. So HUD housing is Section 8 housing. Used to be apartment buildings. Now it's certificates that people can use in various places to help them pay for rent. That is, as AJ points out, different from having a housing stock in a community that most regular people can afford. And the skyrocketing cost of housing here in Westchester has made a gap between people who can afford to live here and people who can't just enormous. It really has.
I was watching Maxine Waters in a Zoom meeting yesterday. She was discussing housing, and she says that the formula or whatever it is for New York City, as far as rent is concerned, it trickled down to Westchester County, and what they put in Congress was they want to eliminate Westchester County from being part of that formula, so that they can work and try to get housing rents and stuff like that down.
So this is part of, whenever I talk to anybody else around the country, whether they're in DC or they're in Chicago or they're in California, and I'm sure you all have found this as well, everyone assumes Westchester is uniformly a very wealthy county, right?
And that's exactly what she said.
I grew up in
Because it's
Sleepy
one of the
Hollow.
wealthiest.
It is not
one of the wealthiest counties, of the country.
Yeah, go to Elmsford, go to Yonkers, go to Mount Vernon, right? We know that's not true. And that's where who represents us in Congress is so important, right? That we're fighting for every single citizen in our districts, not just the wealthiest people, and not just the corporations that are, shoving money into their political campaign funds, right?
So talking about the HUD situation, so I know under Astorino,
yes,
there was a situation where there was the government came in and needed to be a certain amount of HUD, and I think it was supposed to be a certain amount in every community, and Mr. Astorino said that they had met their need, but it didn't. What ended up happening, there was a lot of communities like Chappaqua and stuff that didn't have no HUD, and they built 3 more buildings in Mount Vernon. Yeah. And you understand what I'm saying? So it's like, so countywide, they met their need. They met their need where it was supposed to be in every community, a percentage. And I think there was a big issue with that whole thing with HUD under Astorino.
Well, and Yonkers for how many years on refusing to build affordable housing and integrated housing, mixed use housing as well. Mm-hmm. I think this is why it's so important that the person who succeeds Nita Lowey understands this district so deeply. And we have a couple of candidates who've not lived here as adults, never paid taxes here. I think it matters. I have a dear friend, Lisa Belkin, who wrote the seminal book, Show Me a Hero, about that fight in Yonkers to not have either integration or affordable housing. And we know this has gone on for years and years and years in Yonkers and in Mount Vernon and in White Plains and other communities. And we need people who are going to fight for affordable housing and to make sure that our communities are mixed, right? We don't want gated communities. I don't want my kids to just have people who look just like them in their schools. That is the beauty of public schools and of mixed communities.
I have a question from a listener. It said, what cities in the 17th district would accept affordable housing? Are the wealthy communities willing to accept building housing in those areas?
So this is a question of leadership, right? NIMBY, we know, has been a large factor in stopping affordable housing from being built in wealthier communities everywhere in the country. You need to get people to focus on the facts, right? The facts are when you have affordable housing mixed in with communities, it's a wonderful thing for those communities. And it brings a diversity to those communities that they wouldn't have otherwise. And AJ, this is a question of leadership. And this is a question of who has the ear of elected officials to make this happen.
And so now we're going to do more of a lightning round so I can get more questions in because, and there's no way, first, let me explain, I always say there's no way to get to fully know a candidate in an hour. But, we try to do the best that we can. So before we do all of that, for people that are seeing you, we have a primary in 14 days, I believe, 14 days. It's come down to 7 candidates right now. For people that are hearing from you the first time and they're not really familiar with you, social media, website, how do they get in touch with you, find out more about you, donate, whatever?
Well, AJ, if I could just for a second tell you a little bit more about who I am, because your first question was who I am as a person.
Yes.
And
well, I was definitely going to get to that next. But
All
want to give
right.
you a chance to get your website and stuff in before I forget and all that.
Well, sure. AllisonFineForCongress.com. I'm grateful for that. When the pandemic hit, AJ, I made a strategic decision that I was going to focus on the needs of the community and not fundraise as much. I wasn't going to spend my whole day dialing for dollars like other
I
candidates
read that.
do. Yeah, yeah. And really focus on making sure people had access to resources, making sure that people were safe and as well as they could be, and making sure that I was focused on the vision for moving us forward. And it was an opportunity to demonstrate a style of leadership I called shared leadership that I have been practicing for 15 years that focuses on being accessible and doing more listening than talking, and focus on the needs of other people. And it's actually very, very in keeping with this moment in time, because I've also spent many years learning how to be an ally in the fight for racial justice. And it has many of those same qualities to it. I need more humility. I need to make sure that I'm listening instead of speaking and asking more questions than stating answers.
I apologize to the audience. I know you keep seeing me. Well, I'm monitoring the comments, but too, I'm getting a lot of updates and stuff within the Rochelle situation. I'm still working on that story. So I have various people on boots on the ground that's getting to me. So my phone keeps texting. So you spoke a little bit about my next question. Campaign finance reform.
Yes.
I know a lot of good candidates from library trustee level on up who were not able to compete.
Yes.
And because someone who may not have been as great a candidate was able to raise a lot of money and outspend them, grossly outspend them, and end up, almost buying the seat. Yeah. So how do you feel about campaign finance reform?
I have never felt more strongly about our need for it than I do right this second, having run this race. AJ, it is at the heart of our corrupt politics, how much money is allowed to shape these kinds of races, and how many people are being left out of the system as potential candidates, as you just mentioned, because so much of it relies on raising money. It's appalling.
Income equality.
So one of the major reasons why I'm running, I hope you'll give me a second to unfold this. I grew up in Sleepy Hollow. As you all maybe remember, there was a General Motors plant in Sleepy Hollow here. Remember that?
Tarrytown.
In Tarrytown.
Yes, my dad worked there, and my grandfather, each 35 years each. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Okay, so that plant had 3,000 jobs, many of those good-paying union jobs, and a family could live on that income. In the 30 years since that plant closed, we went, AJ, from being diamond-shaped as a society with a big, robust middle class to being shaped like an hourglass now with almost no middle class, and you can't get there and you can't stay there. That's what income inequality looks like in shape. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, we're at the greatest level of distance between top income, low income since 1968. When we look at moving forward from here, we've been hanging on to the end of the industrial age for years and years and years, and all the corrupt politics of that, and all the white guys staying in power because of that, and the fossil fuel companies. Now that we are so fundamentally broken, that's what the pandemic has done, broken us open. The opportunity is to move to the next economy. The next economy has to be based on green technology, and my background is in tech. I wrote the first book that had the phrase social media in it. I've written 3 books on the topic of online.
I was going to bring that up. You wrote 3 books about social media.
Yeah.
Is there a trick or a secret that we don't know regarding social media that you can tell us that could probably help us?
What do you want to do?
No, I'm just saying anything in particular that about social media that regular person might not know that can be very helpful. Nothing, right? It's basically all there.
Well, here's the thing, Lorraine. The problem with social media now is that the platform companies, Facebook, Twitter, whatever platform you're on, have turned you into the product. They want your eyeballs. And the way to do that is to just keep showing you the same kind of content. So if you've clicked on, I'm just guessing, products for dogs, you're going to see lots and lots of products and conversations about
Yes.
puppy dogs, right?
Yeah.
However, here's the problem for society, Lorraine. If you've clicked on KKK and hatred, that's all you're going to see. And they have created ecosystems of hate that are now spilling from online to on land.
Got it.
Right? We need to hold those platforms accountable for not doing a better job of reducing hate online, of not telling us when they're not letting us see certain things. So AJ, you're on Facebook right now. In the top left-hand corner of your news feed, there's a little button that says you can see the most popular things or the most recent things. If you say, I want to see the most recent things, which gives you more opportunity to see different things, it doesn't stay there. It doesn't become the default setting. You have to keep saying that over and over again. They want you to see the most popular things, so you stay right there with the content that's being paid for, right? So that's one thing. In addition, the FBI isn't tracking the connection between online hate and on-land hate. And there is a connection, and we need to track that to be able to hold people who are hate mongers online responsible for what they're doing.
That's a great answer.
More recently, as far as politics is concerned, online is how the Russians were able to influence our last presidential election.
That's exactly, we've been attacked. We were attacked by the Russians online, and we did nothing about it.
They played on, and they've always done this, but they were very well played on bringing, dividing people further.
Yeah.
So there were two major things they had on there. One was Blacktivists, which worked with Black Lives Matter, which actually planned a rally in Manhattan. And all the Black Lives Matter people jumped on it, and it was actually a rally, but somebody in Russia planned that. And then when I read some stories about the police, I got attacked by Blue Lives Matter, which was their second biggest one. So that was for okay, that's my alarm. So for the police, for those police that felt a certain way, that Blue Lives Matter. For the Black community who didn't trust the police and government, it was Blacktivists, and they were filling everybody, and we didn't know we were being influenced, our thoughts by.
And you know where they started? They started to practice all of that misinformation, all of that chaos with the anti-vaxxers. That's how they got good at it.
Right.
How crazy is that?
Lorraine,
Lorraine, also, my most recent work has been on working with the Gates Foundation to make sure we're ready for automation, which we're not. And automation means the robots are coming. A lot of people are going to be unemployed. Wouldn't it be great to have somebody in Congress who actually understood where the technology is going and how to make sure that we know how to deal with it as a society?
Okay, so for a community like Mount Vernon, but I know Mount Vernon is not your district, but you have some communities like that similar. Yeah. Everyone does not come out of high school, college ready.
Yes.
And what they don't have enough of are trades.
Yes.
You know, like they used to treat, we had auto shop and at home ec, and we had a whole bunch of things when I was in school. Way back then. So they don't have these things now. They're just preparing kids to take tests and preparing them for tests. And our kids are not coming out ready for the workplace. And I think we failed them. We're talking about new technology, and now this pandemic is pushing us toward the new normal even quicker.
Yep. We're
not preparing our kids to be successful in this new world that we're facing.
Well, that's just it, right? 40% of kids are not going to higher ed if they graduate from high school. And as a society, we are not preparing people to be productive. And you know what we're not preparing people to do as well, AJ? To be entrepreneurial.
Well,
right?
then that's what
you don't need to create Apple to be entrepreneurial. You can create a store downtown, you're an entrepreneur, right? Mm-hmm. And we need to help people to understand how to build a business, how to get capital, how to find a mentor, right? Because we are going to have to be super entrepreneurial to get ourselves out of this economic mess.
It's going to be those new entrepreneurs that actually flourish, because which, again, my grandfather worked for General Motors for 35 years.
Yep.
He got my dad the job. He worked in Tarrytown most of that until they closed it, and then he went to Doraville plant in Georgia, and he did 35 years. That kind of job security does not exist in this generation.
Okay. Everybody's going to have to be entrepreneurial,
And-
even
and-
if it's
and-
putting some gigs together.
Right. And my ex-wife went through all the schools, got her master's, and when we lived in Georgia for the first 5 to 6 years, well, first 10 years she lived there, she could not find a career in which she went to school for, and had to do all these other jobs. So we have people that got all these student loan and all this debt, and they can't find jobs in their field.
Well, this is it. It might be that you're making a craft and selling it online, and you are providing a service to people in your community, and you're helping to set up a shop. It might be that your career is all of those things put together. We're going to have to be agile. We're going to have to be creative. We're going to have to allow people to have access to capital, right? We need community banks, which we haven't had in a long time, to enable people to build livings that living wages.
Okay, I have 2 questions that are not campaign questions, and then I'm going to give you last words.
Mets, Giants. I said Mets and Giants.
Oh, okay. Hey, okay, I'm with you there. I have Yankee hats because of the style. I love the Yankee hats, but I like the Mets too. I like to break up the monotony a little bit. So if you were a superhero, who would you be and why?
Batman. You know why? Because Batman got his not superpowers from like being bitten by something or coming from another planet, but through his ingenuity.
You're one of the first females that gave me an answer and didn't just fall like to Wonder Woman. Like
I have 3 sons. We spend a lot of time talking about this.
It's funny you said
wait. The next question. Okay. Wait, the next question is so if your house is on fire, you can only grab 3 things. What would they be?
Do 3 boys count as one thing?
Yeah.
I should. It should,
okay. AJ. 3 boys, photo albums that we never digitized, and I guess the cats.
Okay. See me, I got a go bag with everything in it, all my technology.
Oh, you're ready to go. You're really ready to go.
Yeah, I carry a go bag. I got a go bag. So running out of time. Last words. Anything I did not ask you that you definitely want to speak on platform? Why people should vote for you? Anything that you want people to know about you? So
I am the only person in this race who's been a leader locally. I built the network of elected women. Shanae Williams in Yonkers, Tanya Diaz in Yonkers, Tasha Diaz in Yonkers.
Tasha Diaz, that's my niece.
Okay, so Tasha's been a member of that, and a national leader in technology and in women's rights. And I'm the only person in this race who's not career government, career politician. And if we're going to make any changes in DC, we better have some different kind of leadership there.
That's a good question. Any last question from Lorraine?
No, I wanted to talk to her about Batman.
Okay, well, I want to. Well, Nancy's coming on. Nancy's coming on any minute, so I didn't want to.
Okay, wait. I want to talk about Batman. They call me Alfred.
Oh, they
call me Alfred because I stay home in the computer and tell Tasha do this and different people I help out. So they call me Alfred.
I love that. I want the utility belt with all the the widgets and gadgets on it. I would like an Alfred. You could be my Alfred, Lorraine. Once I
win. Next guest is here. Last words. Anything I didn't ask you?
Early voting starts next week. People should be getting their absentee ballots and starting to vote. This is a very important election. Please, please, please don't be satisfied with business as usual.
Absolutely. I thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for taking the time to be here. I wish you well. If you win the primary, we'd like to have you back going towards the general election. And if you win the election, I hope that you continue to use us as an avenue to get the word out to your constituents.
I am just delighted to be here. I'm grateful for your time and attention. Hope you both stay well and safe, as your families do as well, and hope that we come together as a family, as